it's now more than ever that directors need to perhaps show that leadership capability.
Absolutely. Thanks, Arabella, and thanks for having me.
So what exactly is it that you perhaps suggest directors do in a time like this to perhaps show their sense of leadership, if you want to call it that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the term on everyone's lips is cost containment, and we all know that it's imperative now more than ever. It's always important. Unfortunately, in times like these, I think what we've seen is where's the first place everybody looks for cost containment? It's always the payroll. And I think what our report is trying to show is that it doesn't need to be that way. There are creative ways that you can look at containing costs. I mean, we've all seen the salary cuts that a lot of executives and non-executives have been taking. The question obviously on everybody's lips are those pay cuts going to be permanent, or are those only temporary? And if you want my view on that, definitely temporary at the moment. But I think everybody has accepted that 2020 is not going to be a good year for executive director pay. And everyone's looking forward and saying, what in the future, and importantly, what do we need to be rewarding? So if you ask the question, what should directors be doing to act responsibly? Well, we need to be considering what are the triggers for pay. Usually those would just be financial, as everyone will be well aware. And how do we widen that and say it's not just about creating shareholder value, it's about looking at the wide variety of stakeholders, thinking about employees. Have we limited retrenchments? Have we protected our employees in the best way possible? Have we looked at creative ways in which we can maintain and manage our costs in a way that still is responsible and fair for all?
One of the things then that some may question at a time, and you made note of it as well, was exactly what it is that we actually not just remunerate for, but certainly even give things like bonuses and the like as well. Do you think that the remuneration trends at this point in time will perhaps be altered completely for the future, not just amidst COVID-19, and perhaps a different sort of perspective will be looked at by each company now to say, well, we need to be a little bit more, perhaps let's scrutinize it a little bit more when it comes to that remuneration policy? Yeah.
I'm glad you asked the question. I do think there are going to be permanent changes resulting, from everything that's gone on. There are those who think that the whole the way of remunerating executives is going to change, and actually we're going to swap out total reward and actually make it less, so less opportunity, so less upside opportunity, but in return give a kind of more certain offering to the executives. I don't think that's going to stick, but what I do think we will be seeing is more incorporation of things like ESG, so environmental social governance aspects into pay. Really looking at socially, what are we doing as an organization to ensure that we are sustainable, to ensure that we are impacting society in a positive way. And we cannot just focus on financial growth alone. And interestingly, that's where the shareholders have got to come in and say, okay, do they support this or do they not support this?
Yeah. Leila, just very quickly, we have unfortunately run out of time, but there's also the gender pay gap, right, which is a big issue. Has that widened because of COVID-19? Has there been any sort of work to try and get that better? Have the JSE CEOs in particular and CEOs around the world perhaps tried to, deal with that? Because it's a very big issue.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and I have to be quick. So there's a lot I can say on this, but suffice to say, positive note, I want to give a positive note. We've seen 12 female CEOs appointed since May last year, so that's positive. We are seeing change. It still remains that our biggest problem is representation of women on boards, and particularly in the CEO role. And whilst we don't have women in CEO roles, that gender pay gap for our executives is going to remain large because we're all aware of the big premium that CEOs demand over other executives. So that's the short version.
Yeah. Look, we certainly could actually have the long version, and I think we certainly need to, particularly when it comes to that gender pay gap discussion as well. But unfortunately, Leila, such is the news, unfortunately, where we can't dwell for too long, unfortunately. But thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Leila Ebrahimi there is part of the People and Organization Division at audit firm PWC.